Welcome to America This Week, United We Stand. I'm Eric Bolling. In the past week, the president received not one, but two nominations for the Nobel Peace Prize, one for his work on the historic peace agreement between Israel and the United Arab Emirates, and the other for his work on the economic relationship between Serbia and Kosovo. Joining me now to discuss is former Trump administration Deputy National Security Advisor and author of Revolution, Trump, Washington, and We the People. Good friend, KT McFarland is back. Thanks for joining us, KT. Look, I watch this stuff and I see it, and people are they have so much Trump derangement syndrome out there, they can't give the guy credit. This is something that presidents going back 50 years or longer, 50 years since Israel declared themselves a state. They've been trying to broker peace between Israel and the Arab nations. Tell us how important this is.
You know, I think it's even more important than the last 50, 70 years. I think this is the first agreement, a real agreement, peace agreement, between Israel, between Jews and Arabs in a couple thousand years. I mean, even before there were the tribes that got to the religion part of it. So the reason it's so significant is that previous presidents, Republican and Democrat, they always thought, well, they're going to start by solving the Middle East peace problem by starting with Israel and the Palestinians. It was always a non-starter because the Palestinians didn't want peace. And they were bankrolled, really, by a lot of the wealthy Sunni Gulf Arab states as well as Iran. So they never wanted peace. So peace never happened. But President Trump, who's a deal guy, right? So he thought, okay, well, if we can't do it Israel-Palestinians, let's do it outside in. Let's go to the wealthy Gulf Arabs, get them to agree to peace with Israel, get them to cut off their funding for the Palestinians, and then eventually we'll get our way to Palestinian peace. And so that's what he's done. Now, the reason the Gulf Arab countries are willing to do it is because with American energy independence, which is a key part of this, they know they can't rely on oil exports to fund their governments for much longer. So they have to diversify their economies.
And Katie, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I want our audience to really understand what's going on here. So the goal is to get peace within that Palestinian-Israel region, and maybe peace would spread out, but since that's not happening, Trump's trying to go around. Right. Is that a good strategy? I'm thinking you need the Saudis on one hand to get involved in this, and then you also need the other faction, the Iranians, to get involved, and frankly, those two can't stand each other. There is so much bickering and fighting in the Mideast between different factions, Sunnis, all the various factions of Muslims in the Middle East. Is this biting off too much? More than you can chew.
And Eric, it's a really important question because I would have, if you'd asked me a year ago, I probably would have said you're right, biting off too much. But it isn't, for the following reasons. Is because Bahrain and the United Arab Emirates, the two Sunni Gulf countries that are doing this, they would not be doing this if the Saudis hadn't already signed up to it. The Saudis are in the pipeline. They're going to agree. A number of other countries are going to come and join this agreement in the next couple of weeks and months ahead. Now, the important thing, though, is what you just mentioned, Iran. Now, Iran is not Arab, it's Persian. It is not Sunni, it's Shiite, a different brand of Islam. And the Iranians are the ones who've caused a lot of the problems in the Middle East. And by doing this, by this peace agreement between the Sunni Arabs and Israel, by the lower price of oil, by squeezing Iran economically and getting out of the Iran nuclear deal, the Iranians, who were the world's greatest sponsor of terrorism, they can't be in that position anymore. They can't afford it. And when President Trump killed the leader of the Iranian terrorist network throughout the Middle East, Qasem Soleimani, that really devastated their ability to make war, particularly war against Israel. So I think that what you'll see now is the economics are going to take over. It's going to be a stampede for countries to try to do business with Israel. They're huge economic opportunities. And the telling thing, and Jared Kushner was the guy that figured this out, he went to the bankers of the Middle East, the money guys, and that's the United Arab Emirates, and that's Bahrain. By going to them first, he's cutting off the funding to terrorists, and he's going to make prosperity in the Middle East will happen much more quickly. They're all going to reinvest in each other, and it's going to be amazing.
And so our audience understands, we're sitting here in America, across America, we're airing absolutely across this country, and why that matters to us. The dividend that's paid, the peace dividend is what it's called. Katie, just gives about a half a minute or so. Explain to the American people the U.S. peace dividend from peace in the Middle East.
We've just fought 2 wars in the Middle East. We've been involved in the Middle East in wars, their wars, for 40, 50 years because we needed a supply of oil. We don't need to be in those wars anymore. We have our own oil, they're going to have peace. The second thing is we will now have low oil prices forever, low gasoline prices forever after. And then finally, peace in that part of the world means that we've just spent 20 years focused on the Middle East. How do we guarantee the supply of oil? How do we guarantee Israel's security? And it's been a large part of our national attention span, and that's where terrorism has sprung from. This isn't going to be the case anymore. We're going to have cheap oil, cheap gas, no terrorism. This is all good for America.
KT McFarland, everybody, always good to have you on the show.
Thank you, Eric.